Excuse me as I put my glasses on. Today is an important day, hey? Today I'm going to be giving my take about the doctor Mbuyiseni Ndlozi. Marxism. He recently had an EFF book club, and he was giving his take and imparting knowledge to the people about Marxism. All right, just a little bit of a joke here about my classes. He spoke about Marxism enthusiastically about that. Hey, he was talking about Marxism. You know, he's equating Marxism with Christianity.
Marxism is a political and intellectual movement inspired by the ideas of Karl Marx. We find it's like Jesus Christ. So Christians or Christianity, it is a spiritual movement that finds its origins in the ideas, the preachings of Jesus Christ. Hence they are called Christians or Christianity. So we have Marxism, which is a movement that is inspired by the ideas of Karl Marx, and we call ourselves Marxists because we practice these ideas and we, bring them into being, like Christians bring the word of God to being.
Marxism, he's equating Marxism with Christianity, Marxism, the people who are following Marxism are Marxist, as the Christians are following Christ. They are called the Christians, right? And he also spoke about the two groups in society that are constantly clashing against each other. In Marxism, they talk about the masters, essentially, people who are owning means of production on the other side, and as well as the proletariat, the working class. Okay, he also laments about how constantly capitalism moves and changes. He gave an example about, if you go to Santon this month, you'll see a business premises standing and operating, and when you go again, then the business would not be operating, right? But I think in most cases people are mistaking capitalism as an ideology with communism as an ideology. They tend to mix Marxism, on the other hand, as an ideology which at the same time is the government and as well as an economic system, whereas they fail to mention democratic system of governance where people choose their leader on the other side, and then in the background behind the government, then you would have individuals who are living their lives, obviously working their 9 to 5 at companies which are capitalist companies, right? So they always confuse that. Who is Karl Marx? He never worked. He doesn't know anything about working in his whole life. He tried his luck at the university in Germany, but they wouldn't let him in with what they were reading in terms of this Marxist business. But hey, look what has happened. Later on, people are doing and are working on a trial and tested and failed ideology in over 24 countries essentially. And here we are. But the funny thing about socialism and communism is that each and every political party that takes over with communism, they always say, you know what, in that other country communism wasn't installed well. We're going to do communism very well. You watch us. We're going to have an utopia. The world is going to be a better place with the ideas that we're going to be coming through with our communism. And by the way, this Karl Marx, he also impregnated his mate, and then obviously booted her out so that nobody would know about it. And also his favorite words were like the N word. You should see some of the letters that he was writing to his blesser Engels, who was giving him money throughout, you know, his racism towards black folks. And just do a search and you'll see, you'll find his letters, his personal letters that he was writing, you know. For a political party that purport to be fighting against racism, they should just do a research check and see Karl Marx's view on black folks, you know. They would eventually drop him, you know, but I guess it's one of the few favorite people who are not black, whom are their favorites to economic freedom fighters. So one should commend them that, hey, listen, you know what, not all is lost, you know, there are white folks that they like as well, right? So not excluding or rather not forgetting Vladimir Lenin, also, you know, one of their favorite Caucasian.
The people who build the pyramids, this is a perfect example of understanding capitalist society and civilization. So let's compare it to the Egyptian civilization. You know, the people who build pyramid, they build a pyramid and they like it. It's archaic, it's beautiful, it represents the beauty of a specific, you know, moment in their development. They don't like, you know, tamper with it. It's great. There it is, you know, at the Colosseum. But under a capitalist society, buildings of capital don't last forever. They constantly change. You go off center in a month, the building left, you know, a month ago, you may come back and there are like changes into it. That's a simple example of capitalist, you know, obsession with the constant revolution and development, as it were, of tools, of things, in order that they can maximize profit, in order that they can constantly sell. They can constantly sell.
And he laments about how tomorrow you're not going to find a business standing, but he doesn't understand that when it comes to capitalism by its nature, it's competitive. But the competitiveness of capitalism is an advantage to us, the people. Let me give you an example. You can all remember how expensive television was back in the day, remember? Or you can also remember how expensive a cell phone was, right? But nowadays, what's happening? You can go to the store with maybe 400 bucks and get a cell phone which has applications that you can use to your liking, or you can chip in 1,000 rands and buy a cell phone. The same applies with television. Now, what made the television and the cell phone to be cheaper? It's easy, okay? You would have company A coming in with a cell phone, right? That just makes phone calls and receives phone call. Company B comes through, comes up with a cell phone that has what? You can make phone calls, receive phone calls, and that company B cell phone will be having what? That's different. A camera. And then people will gravitate to that company and buy the cell phones that are having a camera, right? And then company 3 will come through with a cell phone that has an internet. Remember the BlackBerry, right? The BlackBerry was big when it came through. Their cell phones had what we call a QWERTY. It had keyboard where you can just type as if it's like a keyboard of a laptop or any computer, right? They were big in the market. What happened to BlackBerry, it disappeared. What made it disappear or not be that relevant nowadays is because new companies came in, right? Samsung came through, and then as a result, more and more mobile phone came in, and then they pushed what? They pushed the prices down. But they then have to also innovate in order for them to survive and for people to buy them. But this is an advantage to us because you can now buy a mobile phone with the amount that you have. Basically, they are affordable. The same with television, you know. If you come from the countryside, back in the days, we used to watch television at the neighbors, where you pay 20 cents to watch television. But now, almost each and every house, like, they're all awash with televisions. They're like televisions in the bedrooms and so forth. That's how capitalism continues. All right, it's innovative ways that makes life better for people.
What are the means of production? The means of production are the tools we use: land, the machinery that we use in order to produce things, to produce coffee, to produce a t-shirt, to produce food. Those are the means of production. The things we use to produce products we intend to consume. We'll come back to be a human being is consciousness. To be a human being is reason. To be a human being is to possess reason, is to possess subjectivity, is to possess thinking. And in the process of understanding a human being and how he therefore develops, all you do is to trace thinking, is to trace the ideas of a human being. So the subject of idealism is ideas, the idea. But this produces people who think they are individuals who can exist on their own, who don't need other people. It makes you always analyze life from a point of view of the ego, from a point of view. So if a person who is an idealist were to write the history of South Africa, they're going to emphasize on ideas of people. They're going to emphasize great men history. They're going to say Nelson Mandela formed the MK, Nelson Mandela did this. But that will be a distortion. So idealists, in a sense, talk about life or analyze society or analyze relations using individualism, as it were, the ego, the ideas, thought, reason, as it were. So Karl Marx then comes to a different conclusion, a different system of understanding society, a different science of reading the developments in society, of reading social relations, and of understanding what it is to be human. And this system is called dialectics. So because the last person that he was engaging with, which is Hegel, also spoke about dialectics. How Marx distinguishes himself from dialectics is that for him, it's not thought, it is not idealism, but it is the material. So people have great ideas, people have great strength, people have great courage. They are able to do a whole host of creative things, but they do these creative things under conditions, under material conditions and circumstances that half the time they don't choose. But at the same time, humanity, and this is central to this understanding of dialectics, you don't always isolate the individual from social relations. In order to understand the individual, you have to understand the social relations that they exist in. You can't understand a thing without the whole, because in the whole is the thing, and in the thing is the whole. In what it is to be human, you cannot be human without the other. You do not think, therefore you are. In fact, what you are, you always rely on the recognition of others. You are not, you could be crazy if you think, maybe I'm dreaming, maybe I'm inside a machine. You can't rely only on your thoughts. You have to depend on other people to check that indeed you are not going crazy, indeed you are not dreaming, indeed you are not inside a machine and a machine is thinking through you.
Folks, who is Karl Marx? Okay. Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi speaks a little bit about Karl Marx, where he was born in Germany. He speaks about him as a German Jew, and he jokes a little bit about Karl Marx as being, his friends used to call him, I don't know what he said, a certain word, but he was essentially saying that he was a darker Jew. I guess Karl Marx looked like us. But one thing about communism, for communism to survive, it has to constantly and drive the point home that individualism is not needed. Individual freedom, individual choice, individual decisions, and so forth are not needed. So he relayed about how people who talk about leaders in history, like for instance, Mandela formed the Umkhonto weSizwe, Mandela went to jail, came through, saved the day, became the president, and so he says that that's wrong because he didn't do that alone. Okay, he didn't do that alone. It is a society and everyone behind him, you see. And he talks about individualism as sort of a sin, individualism as being ego driven as an individual. One of the things that made countries like the United States to thrive in terms of modern technology, where they came up with the things like the internet, the social medias that we are utilizing now, from YouTube to BitChute to WhatsApp to Twitter to Facebook. Ever wonder yourself why they're coming from the States? The founders in the States, they emphasize on individual freedom, individual entrepreneurship. Okay? So when they came in from the States, running away from the kings in the UK, Britannia, as the Romans call it, in France, in the Netherlands, they went to the States and they vowed and said, you know what? We want to go to a place where there's going to be a separation between the church and the state. You see, that's why even when George Washington, when he won against the British Empire, he said that they would have to have a president. There were suggestions that they would want to make George Washington a king, and then eventually they settled on making sure that an individual in the States counts more than communities. So you're an individual first. You have your partner, you have your kids, you're a family. But as a family, being a unit, you're all individuals, and that's what's important. That's what really made sure that it unleashed entrepreneurship, the likes that the world has never seen before. But with communism, you cannot do that, because that's why when you see most people, most socialists and most communists, if you see them coming on TV and when they're getting interviewed and you say, welcome to our show, Mr. Or rather, Dr. Ndlozi, he's likely to say, thank you for inviting us. You should watch even when the ANC members come on TV being welcomed. Say, welcome to our show tonight. Say, oh, thank you for welcoming us. They don't speak as individuals because they are socialists, they are communists, and that thing gets drilled into their head. Is the notion that you cannot do something as an individual you have to get other people to do things with. It's sort of like a ship mentality, you know. Leaders and pioneers in the world are the ones who make changes, all right, and encourage people. They will always tell you that, listen, you might call me a leader, but I'm not a leader in an essence. I want an input from you. I want you to study what I have said, maybe as a philosopher or as a leader, to go and critique it and even come up with the best idea. But followers or socialists or communists, whenever a person comes up with one idea, they follow it like a religion, like the way you're seeing with communism. And that is why there's where Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi answers a question about communism or Marxism with religion. And also in this EFF book club, where the deputy president of the EFF, Floyd Shivambu, speaks about when he reads the Communist Manifesto, there's where he speaks about religion, and obviously he laughs it off. You know that never shy laughter about communism and religion, because communism does away strictly with religion. Communism believes that religion interferes with its doctrine, because if you can see all these places like the Constitution, the Magna Carta, and so forth, they are all as a result of Christianity, because Christianity and religion in most cases encourages free will. You know, it's one of the reasons why all these documents of freedoms were being written down. You can imagine. Oh, by the way, Mao Zedong, the founder of the Chinese Communist Party, in the 40s and 50s, I think, he chased out a lot of Protestants in China, obviously, because Christianity will stand in the way of communism. Because somebody will say, this is my picture here, you have to worship me as a dear leader. And on the other side, as a Christian, you say, but my book says that Jesus Christ is the only way. I don't worship no individual, I worship God. See, I'm going to be talking about religion and communism later on, when I'm going to do a take on Floyd Shivambu's reading of the Communist Manifesto.